So to sum up, the government is pursuing an actively Darwinian strategy based on very bad health advice that's leading to a massive number of unnecessary and avoidable deaths in Australia. It's a catastrophic situation. I think Brendan's raised the interesting point of what it would take to change it. It's very changeable. It would take leadership. It would take just one state premier or one prime minister or one public health minister or a few more sensible chief health officers. I'm thinking of people like Brett Sutton in Victoria, to step out, get together and start creating some media transaction costs for the grotesque, lethal inaction by state and federal governments on COVID right now. Of course, if you're a political strategist trying to pull off such a move, what you want to do is create a new concept of, you'd want to reconceptualize what's going on in order to create and launch a fresh approach that's not tied to past controversies. And there are some obvious routes to do that. I think the push of lots of multidisciplinary experts around trying to do something about ventilation is one route. Let's organise around clean air as an issue. But short of that, sadly, Mark, I think, I keep thinking of the Robodebt example. What actually stopped that illegal program happening was a court case. That was the only way government was brought to account for shockingly, in some cases, lethally bad policy. And I hate to think that it's going to take some kind of test case or class action around COVID for government to wake up and actually do something about its appalling lethal posture right now. But maybe that's the case. And if that is the case, of course, legal action takes years and years and years to happen. Meantime, when's the next novel virus arriving? Is the national set of quarantine facilities promised by the Albanese Labor opposition, is that in the works, or is that just being completely abandoned? We really are in a serious situation, and it's a leadership vacuum. Someone needs to step in and fix it. There were some hopes that the parliamentary long COVID inquiry could have produced a cracking report that could have stimulated some action, but it was pretty bland and disappeared without trace. In my dreams, some days I wake up and imagine that the independent member for Kooyong, Monique Ryan, was the new federal health minister. I think she'd be capable of really getting a grip on the situation and doing something to it and with it constructively. But under Mark Butler and under current leadership in the Albanese government, I'm seeing a nothing burger. Meanwhile, what's the death rate? It is phenomenally high, our third leading cause of death. And Mark, you're a member of the Canberra Press Gallery. What are the journos doing? Sweet FA, what gives?
Well, it's a very good question. I've been critical of that myself. I'm a tangential member, let's just say, of the Canberra Press Gallery. Legacy member, so maybe you could put it like that. But were you surprised, Chris, just going, to be very specific about this idea of a public health campaign, are you surprised about the absence of that? Because I don't see what the cost to government would be of a campaign which really is about community strengthening, about strengthening community bonds. It can be seen as war challenges and these sorts of things are as a moment of community bonding and really kind of a patriotic thing to do. That the best thing you can do for your country is stay alert to this particular threat and to act in a way that is considerate of other people. I mean, so much of the debate was, going back to your point about cookers and extremists, so much of the debate was allowed to be framed by sort of nutters, basically, around things like whether there was a mandate or not. The mandate discussion only really needed to happen because, I mean, when you think about it, putting on a mask is such a minimal and easy thing to do in circumstances, right? It doesn't curtail your freedoms in any significant way, especially when you balance it against the threat. And if it was seized from the beginning in terms of what a socially responsible person does, who cares about the community they exist in and who cares about the unknown person they're dealing with across the counter when they're buying a coffee or whatever it might be, we could have steered around this whole kind of ludicrous, dim-witted binary about whether there should be a mandate or not, which was the way a lot of people framed it. I don't have to wear a mask, therefore I'm not wearing a mask. I mean, it was sort of inane and childlike in its simplicity, and it felt to me like that part of this was a failure of government to put some money into driving up this community awareness of the effectiveness of these sorts of things and the consideration that they represent one to another in our society.
Completely agree, Mark. Absolutely beautifully put. It is a total mystery. Let's put this in historical context. A previous federal Labor government managed to persuade gay men mid-sex to put on condoms before completing their happy act, right? That was a phenomenal degree of difficulty, and it was brilliantly done, really effective. A lot of co-design involved with the gay community, and as a result, HIV/AIDS was really stemmed in Australia. So many people's lives were saved as a result of that excellent and persuasive public health campaign in conjunction with the gay community and health centres around Australia. It was brilliant. So the degree of difficulty by comparison is trivial in this case. Now, again, with historical perspective, why has government been so limp, pathetic, and inactive in this respect? Well, since the time of AIDS, of course, there's been a massive sustained attack on the public sector. It's been defunded. It's been under-resourced. The APS has been hollowed out. People from across the political spectrum have been made fearful about doing anything particular in terms of public initiatives. I think government is really on the back foot in a way that it needs to kind of become conscious of and snap out of. And if you can't do it over an issue like this, what's it going to take? Personally, when I heard Anthony Albanese relatively early on in a COVID-19 press conference say people need to take, quote, personal responsibility, I thought, wow, on public health, this Labor government has fully signed up for the libertarian let it rip, Dom Perrottet recommended course of action. Is it possible to retrieve the situation under this government? Well, Mark, never give up. There's got to be a way. It might take a new health minister. It might take a court case. But at some time...
Or a podcast.
Or a podcast, indeed. At some time, I really hope Anthony Albanese, Mark Butler and the rest of Cabinet do return to the really strong values of collective care and intelligent application of objective research to bring the community together and reduce this unnecessary and outrageous current death rate, especially in nursing homes, but far from limited to it.
Yeah.
What's it going to take? I mean, I'm glad you're doing this podcast. It's a contribution. What else can we all do to snap the sleepwalkers in the Albanese government out of their current public health failure? After all, Mark, just think, there have been more unnecessary deaths under Mark Butler's watch as health minister than under any federal health minister, at least since World War II. And that's a pretty disgraceful record. He ought to be ashamed. And it's not too late for him to do something about it. I encourage him to revamp policy in a sensible collective care direction.